So your hip hurts. Is it the bone? Is it a nerve? Why do we automatically think it's the joint? What if it could be something that's not the joint that can create massive amounts of pain and mess up your day? Stay tuned and we'll talk about that. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to subscribe down below, ring the bell, and please leave comments and suggestions for newer videos. See you on the other side. Welcome back to the Muscle Repair Shop. My name is Butch Phelps, and today we're going to talk about hip pain. Now I realize you're here because you probably have hip pain, and you're asking yourself, what the heck could be causing this hip pain? Well, my answer is, it depends, as any good lawyer may say. However, it does depend on where is the pain, what movement that you're doing causes it to happen, and how does it feel when you feel that pain. So we're going to talk about the 4 areas around the hip that can create and cause hip pain themselves. Number 1 is the rotating muscles around the hip joint itself. Now on each side of your hip, we typically see what's called the gluteus maximus, and most people know what that is. That's the muscle in your butt there that causes your butt to stick out if it's well developed and can be flat if it's not. But underneath that gluteus maximus, there are 5 hip rotating muscles, and 4 of them are around the hip joint itself, and 1 is just below, called the piriformis. Now some of you may have heard about the piriformis, and the piriformis is a muscle that you use a lot getting in and out of your car, up and down chairs, walking up and down steps, will cause you to use your piriformis a lot. And when it gets tight, believe it or not, it can mimic sciatica. And I've seen this many times where somebody came in believing they had sciatica, and once I was able to help them soften that piriformis muscle and get it stretched out, the pain went away. However, when it comes to the hip joint, if those rotating muscles become tight and stiff, it's going to cause the joint itself, or the hip itself, to actually hurt. What we want to do there is use a tennis ball, and I've got videos on my channel that'll teach you how to do that. Take a tennis ball, place it in a sock, lean against the wall, putting the ball between your hip and the wall, and you gently start to press in. Now I know for most of you, you're used to going to the gym and you want to roll around on everything, and roll and roll and roll and roll and roll, and that's not going to work. So what you have to do is, because the brain is what lets go of that muscle, is you want to take one spot at a time, press just enough to start to feel some discomfort, not pain, but discomfort. When you find it, stay there, maintain the pressure, breathe out, and allow the muscle to relax. Now when you're talking about the rotating muscles of the hip, you should stand sideways to the wall, because those rotating muscles you can get to on the side of the hip itself. Above the hip joint, and you'll feel, if you feel the edges of your hip here, you can feel the bone of the hip here. Above that is a muscle called a tensor fascia lata. Now that little muscle is the one on each side, goes from the hip joint itself up to the top of the pelvis. And when you have that muscle that is tight, it can literally change the pelvis from side to side, which can A, can cause low back pain, and B, which can cause hip pain as well. What we want is to use that tennis ball, and you can use it all in this area right here. You'll feel, like I said, the hip joint and the top of your pelvis, it's running right into here, and then the other rotating muscles are all around this hip joint here. You're going to use a tennis ball around here as well as into the rest of your hip to soften those muscles, so that you can get into the gluteus maximus stretch, which again is in some of my other YouTube videos that are out there. And you can start to move that hip better and causing it to lubricate the way it's supposed to, which can stave off problems like bone on bone, or damaged cartilage, or pinched nerves, or the pelvis tilting one way or the other. That's an easy thing to do, and in fact I would do that at least every day, and if you can do it 2 or 3 times a day for the rest of your life, is not a bad thing. because my clientele are made up of people who had hard bodies and buns of steel kind of thing. That's not where you're supposed to be. You're 70% water. And if your muscles are hard and tight, you're like an ice cube with little legs running around. That's not a healthy place to be. That's going to cause you pain. And it's like, so to have your hips where they're nice and soft so that the muscles can move, that the joint can move, is going to allow you to have better lubrication in your hip. Number two, the quadriceps on the front of your thighs here, there's 4 of them there, believe it or not. They will attach below the kneecap, come over the kneecap, come up through the pelvis and attach into the backside of the pelvis here. When those quadriceps are tight, and they can be tight from sitting in chairs, doing leg lifts, doing squats at the gym, lifting things, even if you lift things correctly, can cause those quads to tighten. As those quads tighten, what happens is it causes the pelvis to tilt forward, which now puts the hip joint at an odd angle, which can cause damage down the road. Learning how to do the quad stretch, which again is on my videos here on the YouTube channel, learning how to do that, and all these stretches, I'll put the videos in the description down below, so don't worry about that. But doing the quad stretch is going to help you. And remember, the quad stretch you see in the gym where somebody stands and they grab their leg and they hold their leg up like that, that is not a quad stretch that's just going to help you. Not at all, because the problem that you're having with your quads are in the upper part of the thigh, not down by your knee. And you don't have to have your heel touch your butt. The third place that you want to go to is the inner thighs. Now there's 4 inner thigh muscles that attach at the lower part of the knee on the inside, and they come up to the pubis bone. When those muscles are tight, they can be tight from the way you walk. Maybe you're doing exercises where you're exercising your inner thighs, squeezing a ball, using a machine or whatever. When they become tight, they can literally pull the knees in closer together, which will cause pain on the outside of the hip over here. So by keeping those soft, you can actually start to free those muscles up so that the pelvis, again, just like with the quads, when they get tight, the pelvis will tilt forward, again causing pain here and causing pain in the middle of your low back. Once you soften and start to get those stretched out, those muscles then can relax, the pelvis can go back into place, and now the hip is in the proper joint. In that one, the medial hip thigh stretch, I have found to be one of the best stretches to make that happen for you so that you can stop that. And again, I'll put a link down below in the description so that you can go there on my videos and you can see those as well. And then finally, the hamstrings. The hamstrings are a highly misunderstood part of the human body, along with the calves. In fact, the rotation of the human body starts in the calves, moves up into the 3 hamstring muscles, and that allows the hips then to rotate. Now, when I was an athlete and younger, I would hear people talk about the hamstrings, but when they were describing movement and stretching with the hamstrings, they talked about one muscle, like it was just one muscle. But the reality is there's 3 muscles there. I would always say do the calf stretch first, and then do the hamstring stretch following that. What can happen is that when your calves are tight and the hamstrings are tight, the rotation of the hips, the rotation of the body becomes difficult. And so what happens is that you're trying to force that hips to rotate while the muscles below that actually facilitate the rotation are blocking you. Now, I've worked with some baseball pitchers where their calves and their hamstrings were tight, and they even had shoulder pain as a result of it, and once we freed those up, the shoulder pain disappeared. That's just how powerful that is. The sad part is we don't fully understand how that works, and unfortunately, this is hurting everybody else out there. But by not allowing the freedom of the hip joint to move and stay lubricated, by keeping your thighs, whether it's the quads, the inner thighs, the hamstrings, along with the calves, freed up, and then the muscles in the hip itself softened and stretched out, and you can stretch out those hips with the gluteus maximus, stretch as well. Without having those all soft and working correctly, you're putting way too much stress on the hip joint. So over time, if you think about, if this is the femur or your thigh bone going into the ball, which goes into the socket into your pelvis here, if all those muscles are pushing this in closer and closer together and it's banging in closer and closer together, two things will happen. Number one, you're going to squeeze out the synovial fluid, which is like a WD-40. It's a cushioning agent as well as a lubricant, and you're going to start breaking off the cartilage around the ball of the hip and the inside of the joint itself, which is going to cause permanent damage that more likely will force you to have a hip replacement at some point in your life. I would rather that you not have that hip replacement. What I'd really like to see you do is understand how your body works so that you can prevent these things from happening. That's part of why I'm doing this series, is let's get you in a position to where hopefully you don't have to have a hip replaced or you don't have to have a knee replaced. That would be my dream. And if we can have that, that would be awesome. If you enjoy what I've been talking about today, please subscribe down below, ring the bell, and as always, please leave comments, suggestions, questions, whatever that you like, because you may have a question that somebody else listening to this has also, but is afraid to type it in and ask. And I'm always more than happy to listen to your questions and your comments and help people to actually improve their lives. That's the whole point of me doing this, is how can we help you improve your life so that you don't have to face these expensive surgeries later on in your life. So again, please subscribe down below, ring the bell, leave your comments and suggestions, and for now, see ya.